So this one is the Carlos Lucas Winery, Cota 700 Dow. So Dow region blend.
Yep, so Dow is the region. It's right in the heart of Portugal, just underneath Douro. Oh, that's gripping me, that is. That surprised me how tannic that is. Just underneath Douro, surrounded by mountains, and yes, there's a little region called Dow, but it's a word, I guess, that we're familiar with probably with Portuguese wine. Like if you do see Portuguese wine on the supermarket shelf, Dow you see quite a bit of. Yeah. And it's generally associated with red. They do white wines, but yeah, it's very much red-led area, and it's always red blends. So here we've got Touriga Nacional, which is very much the red grape of Portugal. It's their main staple. It's what most ports start with. We've got Alfachero in here, and then we've got Tinta Rores, which is the Portuguese name for Tempranillo.
Very good. I mean, yeah, like you said, you used to be like, oh, it's pretty tannic. That is where it's like, it's gripping, isn't it? It like coats the inside of your gums a bit, and like drinking a black coffee. For sure.
And the thing about red blends or big red wines, they're actually done in slightly cooler areas, and we'll come to that in a bit, why it's a slightly cooler area, is the tannin does stick around. So for example, most famous wines of northern Italy, like Barolo, we associate Barolo as, and that's a region that's generally made from one grape and sometimes can be blends, but we associate Barolo, don't we, with big, heavy red wine, but actually because it's in the cooler parts of Italy, really tannic, super grippy, really dries out the gums. Now, I wouldn't say this is in Barolo territory, but it's a light fruit, but there is a grip, isn't there? There's a real grip there.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, so like you said, Dow, something we're fairly familiar with. This is also old vine.
Yep.
We've spoken about that before. Old vine just means a bit more flavour, slightly lower yield.
That's right. So yeah, this is... Carlos is running a really, really small operation. It's only about 15 to 20 years old, all hand harvested up the mountains, really, really small scale, and old vines. Yeah, and when there's no like law about what you can call a old vine, in terms of years, but generally if it says old wine, you're talking 60 to 100 years old. And you can get grapes off of a vine that are commercially viable for making wine, from I guess 5 to 10 years in. But as those years go by, the amount of grapes, as you say, the yield on the bush decreases. You get less grapes each year, but the flavour and the concentration of fruitiness in the grape increases each year at a time. So yeah, more flavour, but less grapes, smaller yields. It tends to mean like the price has to go up, but this is a region that still demonstrates really, really good value.
And 13%, I think we're on here.
13.
So it's no, by no means like a wishy-washy,
No.
Super light, but it's not a slap in the face, big bolshy red. Like, how have they balanced that out?
Yeah, so we're talking central Portugal here. It's pretty damn warm, and so it could very easily make some big, heavy-hitting red wines. But 13%, that must mean there's been some cooling influences to keep the temperature down. So I said it's a mountainous area surrounded by mountains. There's two benefits there, actually. One is the cooling stuff I'll come on to, but the first one is actually consistency, because being surrounded by mountains creates like what we call a microclimate, i.e. bad weather can't get in from the coast or from across from Spain or anything like that. It's sheltered. Consistency means they can predict every year that the weather's going to be about the same at the same time. They can make good growing decisions, and then that means that they don't have like grapes go bad or get destroyed by damp rot or get blown away in terrible winds or hail, and therefore actually that means good value because you can demonstrate good pricing based on that. And then the other thing is cooling factors. So yeah, further up the mountain we go, the cooler it gets. Also what you get with mountainous vineyards up a mountain, is it will be super warm and sunny and hot in the day, but really, really cold at night, and that's called diurnal change. There we go, technical term. Diurnal change is really, really good for grapes, because what that means is tons of ripening time in the day so that they get super fruity, and then at night cools down and stops, like puts a stop on that process to maintain the acidity. And the acidity, even in red wine, not necessarily just in white, but the acidity is what still keeps it moreish and like makes a thirst quenching and that sort of thing.
So is this like typical of a Dow red, that it's a bit like this, it's got a bit to it, but it's on a lighter end, or is Dow a region where you really just need to try it because it can go anyway, just because it's got the ability to change?
No, it is pretty typical of it. I would say the cheaper end of Dow. So if you're in the supermarket and you're seeing Dow at like less than £6, then it's probably not been planted on the mountains. It's been planted in the flat plains beneath, and that will be really, really warm and ripe. So the percentage will be up and it might be what we call a bit blousy. Tons and tons of fruit, but no real bite to it whatsoever. But typical DAO, good quality DAO, will have that tannic bite to it. So if it's not your thing, be aware of that. Yeah. And you might want to move maybe further south into Portugal for those red blends that have had the full sunshine.
Nice. Slightly tannic, bit grippy, this one. I mean, use the word grip, and I say it's just that pulling nature on inside your mouth. Food and a grippy wine.
Yeah, so there's still loads of fruit in there. It's still bold, in terms of red wine territory. We're not talking thin Pinot Noir or anything like this here. So it can go with full-bodied dishes, it can go with stews and stuff, but tannin is really, really great with like lean red meat, steak, burgers, that sort of thing. There's a particular protein that matches with the polyphenols in tannins and breaks them down and makes the wine taste more fruity. So steak, burgers, that sort of lean beef type situation, perfect.
Nice. Well, I like the barbecue.
Cheers.